The Virtual Boy has a small library of official games, as well as some pretty cool homebrew, some of which are really impressive. While there's been ROM carts in the past, there's now one that could play the entire library of games all on an SD card. I'd like to introduce you to the HyperFlash32. The HyperFlash32 is one of the most unique ROM carts I've ever used, featuring an eInk screen on the front that works just like an e-reader and retains the thumbnail info even when it's powered off. On the back are capacitive touch buttons that you use to navigate the menu and select your game. There's a USB port on top that's used to power the cart whenever you're loading new games, as well as for developers to use while testing, as well as a microSD slot. The HyperFlash32 comes as either cartridge only or in a complete box set as you see here. The complete in box version is a bit more than just the cart, but if you're an avid Virtual Boy collector, you'll definitely want to consider getting the whole thing, as this complete in box set is just as high quality as an official games complete in box set would be, and even comes with the proper inserts. Part of the set includes a manual with detailed instructions on how to use it. That's a really nice touch and not something that you see that often anymore. The manual also explains the setup, which I'll show a bit later on, but it's really easy. There's no crazy registration requirements or firmware locked to serial numbers. Just download your files, add your ROMs, and go from there. After the SD card is set up, just insert it into the HyperFlash32 and then power it with any USB charger. Now, you don't need any specific USB device and you don't even need a PC or anything. And for this video, I'm even going to be using one of those small USB portable chargers just to make the footage easier to get and just to make it easier to move around. But all you need is any USB power and then you could start using the functionality of the cart. After the cart's powered up, pressing and holding the select button will bring up the special thanks menu. This lists people that helped on the project, including people who submitted some amazing thumbnails, which you'll see in a bit. Then, holding A and B together on the back accesses the menu. When you press them, the cart vibrates, giving you a haptic touch sensation, letting you know that an operation has been performed. Once the menu loads, you could tap A or B to move up and down, and holding either for a short period of time will skip by screen. I'll admit the capacitive touch buttons were a bit clunky at first, but capacitive touch is always kind of clunky. Especially in appliances like my air fryer. I mean, there's no freaking reason for capacitive touch buttons on a big device like this. Give me a normal number pad or something. I just want my damn air-fried chicken. On the other hand, capacitive buttons make perfect sense in a small device like the HyperFlash32, and the slow refresh rate of the capacitive buttons match the slow refresh rate of the eInk screen. So in my opinion, it's totally worth getting used to. The haptic feedback really helps as well, and as long as you don't try to push the buttons too quickly, everything works pretty smoothly. Also, as a note, if the cart ever freezes, or if you accidentally unplug the power while in the menu, just plug it back in, hold A and B, go back into the menu, and reload any game. Once you've chosen your game, press the select button and back and it'll start loading. This can take anywhere between 15 seconds and almost 2 minutes depending on the size of the game. After it's done loading, as long as you've set up the SD card correctly, the game thumbnail loads and it stays loaded even after you unplug power from the cartridge. This really is such a unique and awesome feature, and I wish more ROM carts could integrate it. While yes, it takes a bit longer to load ROMs than the instant load ROM carts that have come about the past few years, I think it's a worthy trade-off because you essentially turn the ROM cart into the actual game that you're using. After it's loaded, there's no reason to power it from USB anymore, and you could just insert it into the Virtual Boy as if it was a standard Virtual Boy game cartridge. Setting up the HyperFlash32 is really easy, and there's a few different options for how to do it. Either way, start by formatting your microSD card FAT32. The entire Virtual Boy ROM set will fit on a very small card that Windows should be able to format FAT32 directly without any extra software. But if for some reason the only card you have access to is a larger one, you'll either have to manually format it or use custom software like GUI Format 32 for it. Once it's formatted, you can download the package Kevin provides and extract that to the SD card. Kevin already included community-submitted artwork that should load whenever it detects the corresponding ROM, so overall it's a pretty simple process. Just extract his group of files and then add all of your ROMs to the corresponding ROM folder. Alternatively, you could use a software tool designed by Thunderstruck that simplifies a lot of the work. You could import games right through the tool and even create and load your own thumbnail files. As a note, this is a beta version of the software, but the final version should look really similar. Also, while I like the fact that this software isn't necessary, it certainly makes the whole process easier, and it's definitely how I'll be transferring all my games. There's even a built-in firmware updater. Just connect the HyperFlash32 to your PC, and this will auto-detect what version your cart's on and see if there's an update available. As a note, after your cart is all set up, here's what the file structure will look like. Save games will be kept in the ROM read folder, and like other ROM carts, they'll be transferred there every time you load a new game. This will allow you to back up and transfer save games, which is always a good feature. As a note, these files are even created for games that don't have save functions. It's just done to keep the firmware more simple, and you could ignore all the save files from games that don't actually have save games built in. And that's really all there is to it. Configure the microSD, copy the files over, load your own games, and start playing. Each time you load a game, the Virtual Boy thinks it's an original cart, and there's nothing more to worry about. I especially like that games like Wario have their save functions retained, even after switching to another game. I think that really rounds up the HyperFlash32's features in order to make it equal to or better than an original Virtual Boy experience, which is really cool because at the end of the day, it's all about playing the games, and while it's really awesome that this cart has a fun experience getting there, playing the games is actually what really matters. I'm sure some people would prefer an experience closer to the EverDrives, where you just drop all your files on an SD card, select your game from right inside the Virtual Boy, and go from there. And to be honest, I think that's a great idea too, and hope Kevin someday makes a ROM cart that works like that as well. Even with that cart though, I think a lot of people would still choose the HyperFlash32 just because it's such a unique experience, and honestly, that eInk screen is so cool. Overall, I absolutely love the HyperFlash32, and I think any Virtual Boy fan should at least think about picking one up, because even if you already have all of the original retail games that you'd like to play, there's a whole bunch of really cool homebrew available on the Virtual Boy, including Hyperfighting, which this will play, unlike the other ROM cart that was previously available. So even if you have every Virtual Boy game ever made, picking up one of these is definitely going to be cheaper than picking up a full complete in-box Hyperfighting set. So right off the bat, you'd get your money's worth, but it's just a very cool and unique device that every time you mess around with it, you kind of realize even though ROM carts have been out for a while, there's still a lot of room for them to grow and add new features. There's even silly little things that I didn't show in the video, like the Virtual Boy's eyes light up in the back during certain access times, and just fun little stuff like that. So overall, if you're a fan of the Virtual Boy and you want a very unique ROM cart experience, as well as, once again, a way to play a bunch of really cool homebrew, definitely consider picking this one up. Well, that's it for this time. If you liked this video, please consider signing up for any support services such as Patreon or Floatplane, because your support is what keeps these videos, the weekly podcast, and all the behind-the-scenes research I'm involved in alive. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.